Hi, this is Alessio, Rastani, leading trader. Hope you're well, and welcome to this update on Bitcoin and the crypto market. In this particular video, what I want to focus on is one crypto, which we haven't mentioned that much in these videos for some time, but I want to bring your attention to it because it's quite interesting. Now, as you probably noticed, the big news story of the last few days has been this pop in the price of Bitcoin, as you can see here. However, notice one interesting thing, that the price of Bitcoin couldn't actually get much going above the 55 daily moving average. That's the magenta line you see on my chart. So it did have a pop, very nice one as well, but it stalled at the 55 EMA on the daily time frame. Actually got rejected from there, as you can see there. So that level has acted as resistance on Bitcoin. But of course, the news story hasn't been so much about Bitcoin, but actually more on Litecoin. Litecoin's surge has been tremendous. Actually, it's been quite a significant one, as you see here. Now, by the way, I should just say, whenever I make one of these videos, and whenever I mention a pop in the price of something like a crypto, I often get comments from people out there who are not familiar with our videos, and they don't know that our videos are mostly chart-based or technical. And I often get some kind of comments, often not very nice comments, saying, why don't you talk about the news story behind what's happening here? Okay, so as I'm sure you appreciate, guys, that we're not into news narratives. We keep news events and news narratives for the masses. But of course, if you want me to mention it, I'll mention it. Yes, there's been some theories happening across the media that you can read it for yourself if you want to go ahead and if you're interested in that kind of stuff. Yes, there are all kinds of theories going around, for example, with Wimble and all that kind of stuff. Again, as professionals and chart analysts, we're not interested in news narratives. But of course, if you are interested, then please go ahead and knock yourself out. And again, one of the reasons why we don't pay attention that much to the fundamentals and the news narratives is not because we hate them, but mostly because of the fact that the good old one of my favorite traders of all time is Bernard Baruch. And he famously said, show me the charts and I'll tell you the news. Let me repeat that. Show me the charts and I'll tell you the news. Which is why the great traders of our time, people like Paul Tudor Jones, people like Richard Dennis, they all look at chart analysis. So what exactly is going on here on this chart of Litecoin? Well, let me just actually make this very clear that despite the surge in Litecoin and despite the fact that Litecoin right now is kicking the behind of Bitcoin, if you compare Litecoin against BTC, LTC, BTC, you can see that Litecoin right now is outperforming Bitcoin. I always love looking at these charts. Look at this, by the way, guys. When the pulse signal fired right here, the beginning of February, this pulse fired to the upside right there. Price of Bitcoin, I beg your pardon, the price of Litecoin surged. You can see it right there. And the momentum of this, as you can see, pushed this higher as well. But going back to the chart of Litecoin itself, notice what's happening on the chart of Litecoin. And notice something interesting here. As LTC USD here on this chart. First of all, Litecoin has stalled at the 200 daily moving average. That's the green line you see here on my chart. So stalled at that level. So it couldn't get past that resistance, right? The second thing I want to mention here is that it's also come to a level which is equally important. And let me see if I can get this on my chart. I believe we've also stalled at the Fibonacci retracement level. Just going to the Fibonacci retracement tool, and then we'll just do a Fibonacci retracement from that high to this low. Yeah, so it's actually more or less hugging that 61.8% Fibonacci retracement, a key level on the charts. The question is, can it hold above this level or is it going to fall below it? The balance of probabilities suggests that actually it's much more likely for this level to hold resistance and for Litecoin to fall back below that 61.8% retracement. So guys, just to be clear, there are at least two levels of important resistance: the 200 daily moving average and the 61.8% Fibonacci retracement. There's also something else. This is a chart that I always look at. This is the chart on MT4 of Litecoin, and the reason I keep an eye on this chart is because of the fact that it excludes weekend data. I always think it's important that traders and professional analysts always keep an eye on the charts that exclude weekend data. For example, the charts on TradingView often include they often include the weekend performance, but I think it's a good idea to also look at the charts that exclude weekend performance. Why? Because often weekend movements are driven by bot and algorithmic activity. And as we know, bot and algorithmic activity often corrupts the price movements and often does not show the correct, accurate picture of the charts in the market. And secondly, a lot of the volume is not present during the weekend period. So most of the volume is present during the Monday to Friday session, but not as much during the weekend session. So it's important to always keep an eye on what's happening on the charts that exclude weekend data, like a chart like this. By the way, you'll see also on my chart of Litecoin, the wave count. So as you can see here, wave 3 most likely formed. The bottom of wave 3 is formed most likely in December. And this pop you've seen here, this movement to the upside, is most likely wave 4. I understand that the price of Litecoin has gone slightly above these previous levels during the weekend. But bottom line is this, that this is most likely still part of a wave 4 movement. All right. And in fact, it's unlikely to be the start of a new uptrend. Most likely part of the wave 4. If I just show you what I mean, let me just show you on this chart what I'm talking about. This is the in Elliott wave theory. For those of you not familiar with Elliott wave theory, in wave 4, which is a corrective wave, wave 4 is usually composed of 3 waves, A, B, C. So what we're saying is that it's most likely we're still dealing with the C wave of this wave 4 correction. All right. In other words, going to the chart that we just saw a few moments ago. All right. So this is the chart of Litecoin here. This is the chart that includes weekend data. So in other words, if wave 3 formed here in December, then this pop you've seen here, this movement, this is part of wave 4. All right, wave 4. All right. And this is likely to be the ABC. All right. So A, B, C. So this pop, this surge you've seen in the last few days, whatever the news story is, we don't really care about the news stories. Bottom line is that as far as the charts and technicals are concerned, as far as the psychology of the price is concerned, we're dealing with actually most likely a wave 4 correction, which means what? Which means this is a level where very likely we're going to see sellers taking control. Okay, so what I'm looking for is situations where sellers will probably take control, bears will probably take control. By the way, take a look at the weekly charts of Litecoin as well. Always keep an eye on where the weekly levels are. And let me just show you what I'm looking at here. Notice that you will see that in fact, Litecoin has hit, it's hit the 21 moving average, the 21 weekly moving average, which is often a strong level of resistance on the charts. All right. And by the way, just take a look at this chart here on MT4. On MT4, where we exclude weekend data, you will notice something interesting, that in fact, we've hit the trend line. Okay, notice it's hit that trend line resistance that's running through here. In fact, if I just go on a weekly time frame, pretty much the same picture. Okay, notice very similar picture. Just go back over here. It's hit the trend line, okay, and got rejected from there. Now I know over the weekend it went slightly towards that trend line. It might have breached it, but bottom line is weekend activity is often driven by bot activity, so it's not organic human activity. So I don't really put much credence into it. But bottom line is, what I'm interested in is what's happening in the Monday to Friday session as well. One thing I should mention here is this: on Litecoin, we've got a pulse signal forming on the weekly time frame. Put it this way: if this pulse on the weekly time frame fires eventually to the upside, which is less likely. Well, if the pulse fires to the upside, very likely Litecoin is going to surge into a potential uptrend. So in other words, if this pulse fires to the upside in Litecoin, very likely we're dealing with a bottom here in Litecoin. But if this fires to the downside, okay, which I think is more likely, if this fires to the downside, very likely we're going to see further downside pressure in the price of Litecoin. Okay. To the downside. So that's very interesting indeed happening here on Litecoin. Eventually, I think actually one more chart I want to show you is this. Take a look at this. This is the Sigma chart. This is the Sigma chart of Litecoin. And what's interesting about this is that we got some strong level of resistance. The red area is the red Sigma zone, and this is the level where price often gets rejected. That's in the 40 43 to 45 levels here. 43 to 45 levels going to hold resistance for Litecoin, and very likely we're going to see rejection from those levels back down. So bottom line is, I don't think this surge in Litecoin is anything to get excited about. I think very likely bears will take control of Litecoin at some point and push it down back towards the previous lows for this wave 4 to complete and for the wave 5 eventually to form in this. By the way, one more thing I should just mention. You may remember some months ago I said pretty much the same thing about Ripple, XRP. When Ripple had a massive surge about 4 months ago, this is the video I put out there. Is the surge in this crypto a dangerous trap? I was talking about Ripple at the time. So you may remember, go to the daily time frame chart. Okay, so back then, this is what was happening in XRP. Massive sudden surge in Ripple, XRP. And I said at the time, look, this is most likely a bull trap. In other words, most likely this is gonna fail. I remember at the time, many folks, I think most likely XRP fans, sent me a lot of hate mail, to put it nicely. They basically said, no, I'm wrong, and that XRP is going to surge massively higher. Well, as you can see, XRP actually managed to fall from those levels back down to its previous level. So those of you who agreed with me, actually, that the movement in XRP most likely was a pump and dump and a bull trap, we were actually correct on that point. I think most likely that's what we're dealing with here in Litecoin as well. We should be very careful about jumping to any sort of conclusions about this. But look, I'm going to keep an open mind, all right? One thing we never do in these situations is have a closed mind. I'm going to keep an open mind. But I also want to make sure I mention this. Professional traders, professional investors never fall in love with their investments. One of the best sayings in the trading industry is fall in love with your neighbor's wife, but don't fall in love with your investment. Big mistake. All right. So always keep a professional, objective opinion. And indeed, keep yourself objective, impartial when it comes to any sort of crypto or stock or whatever. All right. Never fall in love with your investment. Never fall in love with your altcoin or crypto. If you fall in love with your altcoin or crypto, what most likely is going to happen is you'll become blind to the risks. Just like, for example, the people who bought Litecoin back in 2017, when the price of Litecoin hit $360. If those people who bought Litecoin back then had thought about the risks, about the fact this could be a bubble, and this bubble is going to eventually burst, of course, they didn't do that. All right. So that's why it's important. Never fall in love with your crypto and instead be mindful of the risks. All right, guys, before I finish the video, I just want to quickly say that you can watch the replay of my full webinar, the members webinar we did with Zach Mir. It's in the members area. So if you're a member, go ahead and watch the replay if you haven't already done so. And if you're not a member, you can become one today by going to this link you see here, leadingtrader.com/join. And go ahead and watch the replay of our Predictions 2019 webinar. And guys, I'll see you in the next video. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And also please subscribe for future updates. Thanks very much indeed. Bye for now.